I was 38 when my cousin said I ruined her life. But it wasn't until she said I'd assaulted her that I realized she'd ruined mine. It happened in Fargo, where I'd moved in 2015 after getting laid off in Minneapolis. I'd been living in my aunt's basement for a few months. Not ideal, but cheap, and I figured family would be better than strangers. Turns out I was wrong on both counts. The accusation came in spring of 2016. I didn't hear it from her. I heard it from my boss, who called me into the office looking pale and too careful. Said there'd been a police report. Said it involved a family member. I laughed at first. I thought maybe she'd accuse someone else, and there was a mix-up. That's how stupid I was. That's how much I trusted her. By the end of that week, I was fired, evicted, and ghosted by everyone whose number used a mean home. My parents stopped answering my calls. My sister unfollowed me on every platform. One of my uncles told a mutual friend that I should be ashamed to show my face. I didn't know how to defend myself from a crime I didn't commit, a story I couldn't even hear from her mouth. And that silence was louder than any accusation. I spent the next 9 years alone. Small towns, temp jobs, cheap motels. Depression doesn't kill you in one shot. It wears you down with tiny cuts. Unopened emails, birthday voicemails you delete without listening, a drawer full of return-to-sender Christmas cards. But I survived. And then, last year, she called. It was a voicemail. I let it sit in my inbox for 4 days before I pressed play. I thought I'd delete it without listening. I'd done that before, kept my distance, kept the peace, kept myself upright. But something about her name on the screen made my hands shake. She said she lied, that she was young, scared, and needed attention, that the story had spun out of control, and by the time she realized what she'd started, it was too late. She never said the word sorry, just that she'd finally told the truth, and if my family called me soon, that's why. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I just stood there, holding that message like it was a dead thing in my hand. After 9 years of being the family's monster, after losing everything that made me feel human, she decided she could fix it with a voicemail. My parents called 2 days later. My mom's voice was small. My dad said they'd made a mistake, that they believed her because she was crying and I was distant. Not angry, just distant. I told them I wasn't ready. That's the only thing I could say that didn't feel like betrayal to myself. I still don't know if I've forgiven her. Some days I think I have. Other days, I feel like I'm still stuck in 2016, standing outside my own life, watching it burn. But things are better now. I have a job I like. I started dating someone, slowly, carefully. I'm not whole yet, but I'm not broken anymore either. Funny how something as ordinary as a grocery store can turn into a minefield when you're rebuilding your life from the wreckage. It was early fall last year, just a couple weeks after that voicemail. Leaves turning, crisp air, that false promise of new beginnings in every breeze. I was in the produce section of Hornbacher's, comparing apples like it mattered, when I heard someone whisper my name. Not call out. Whisper. Like a secret. I turned, and there she was, Mrs. Elroy, my 10th grade English teacher. Silver hair pulled back, purse clutched like it might fly away. She didn't smile. Just looked at me like I'd been resurrected from the dead, but not in a holy way. I nodded, gave a quiet hello. She mumbled something back and moved on without looking me in the eye. That's what it was like now. People didn't spit or shout. They did something worse. They hesitated. Looked at me like I was a headline they'd forgotten, but still didn't want to touch. Even after the truth came out. Because no one makes a public retraction in real life. There's no town meeting where someone stands up and says, "We got it wrong." He didn't do it. The lie is loud. The truth is a footnote. That day, I left my card in the aisle and walked out. I didn't even realize I'd forgotten my wallet on the conveyor belt until the cashier ran out after me, holding it like it was radioactive. She didn't smile either. I went home, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the couch for a long time. I didn't cry. That phase passed years ago. Now it's just a low, constant pressure like weather behind the eyes. It took me weeks to go back. Not just to that store, but anywhere public. I started shopping late at night. Wore a hat. Avoided eye contact. It felt stupid, like hiding in plain sight. But made things bearable. That's also when I started seeing Leah. Not dating. Not yet. Just chatting after AA meetings. Neither of us drinks anymore. But sometimes sobriety isn't about the bottle. It's about surviving something that almost wrecked you. Her ex left her with debt and 2 kids. I left my past in a voicemail I still can't delete. We don't talk about the hard stuff directly. Just orbit it. But I think she sees me. Not the monster people thought I was. Not even the man I used to be. Just someone still trying. There's this bench down by the Red River in Fargo. Not much to look at. Just a slab of wood worn smooth by wind and time. but it's where I go when I can't stand the walls of my apartment pressing in on me. I went there one Saturday in October, wind whipping the trees like they owed it money. I was holding the letter, the one my cousin sent me after the voicemail. For pages, handwritten. I hadn't opened it yet. Carried it around for weeks like it might dissolve on its own. Like maybe the ink would fade if I waited long enough. But that day something shifted. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was Leah, who'd asked gently the night before if I ever planned to read it. Maybe I just got tired of the wait. So I sat down, unfolded the pages, and read. It was a mess. She rambled, apologized without using the word, talked about therapy, about guilt, about not knowing how to live with what she did. Said she thought I was safe to lie about, quiet, soft-spoken, someone no one would offend too hard. She wrote that line like it was some kind of excuse. It hit harder than the accusation ever had. I didn't finish the letter. I folded it back up and left it on the bench. Someone else could pick it up and wonder what kind of story ended in that handwriting. I didn't need to carry it anymore. On my way back, I passed a couple walking their dog. The guy gave me a nod, just a polite hello. And for the first time in a long time, I nodded back without thinking. It was nothing, but it felt like a beginning. The porch light flickered when I stepped onto Leah's stoop, casting long shadows across the cracked concrete. She hadn't replaced the bulb in weeks, said it gave the place character. I figured it just meant she'd stopped expecting anything to feel bright for a while. I was there to drop off the photo prints. Her boys, Milo and Jonah, playing at the park, one of those perfect fall afternoons where the light makes everything look softer than it really is. She tried to hand me cash. I shook my head, told her it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. She invited me to stay. I said I couldn't. She shrugged and brought out 2 chipped mugs of iced tea anyway. October wind cut sharp across the porch, and the tea was cold, but I drank it. It felt like a test, and maybe that's what it was, both of us testing if this connection could hold. The silence between us was a different kind than I was used to. It wasn't the silence of suspicion. It wasn't the quiet that screamed shame. It was just stillness, an honest kind of quiet that didn't ask for anything more than presence. At some point, she looked at me and said, almost offhand, that she knew what it felt like to be turned into someone you weren't. Her ex, the father of her boys, had spread rumors, accused her of things she didn't do, said she was unstable, said the boys weren't safe. She didn't cry, didn't dramatize it, just let the words land like dull stones in the middle of a river. I think that's when I told her. Not all of it, but enough. About the accusation, the silence, the slow rot of being erased from your own life. I told her about the voicemail, about how my cousin never said sorry, just claimed it was the truth now, like that was enough. She didn't flinch, didn't offer me some canned line about strength or healing. Just listened, like she knew that sometimes the hardest thing isn't surviving what happened. It's saying it out loud without falling apart. After a while, she asked if I'd ever been back to the grocery store. I said once. Told her I left my wallet on the conveyor belt. Told her the cashier held it like it might burn her hand. Leah nodded, said next time she'd go with me. No big gesture, no performance. Just 4 words I hadn't heard in years that felt like an invitation back to the world. Thanksgiving was the first time I saw my parents face to face since 2016. I wasn't going to go. Had no interest in sitting at a table that once turned its back on me. But Leah said something that stuck. Avoiding them won't undo it, and showing up doesn't mean forgiving them. It just means you're no longer hiding. So I went. Their house looked the same. Same welcome mat. Same chipped mailbox. The only thing different was me. And maybe them, but I wasn't ready to believe that yet. My mom opened the door like she hadn't cried into the phone 2 months earlier. Like we were just catching up after a long trip. My dad stood behind her, awkward, hands in his pockets like he wanted to say something but didn't have the tools. I brought a pie. Store-bought. I didn't plan to stay long. The table was smaller than I remembered. Not in size, just in feeling. My cousin wasn't there. I asked why, even though I knew. My mother said quietly that she thought it would be better this way. No one argued. Dinner was polite. Not warm. Not tense either, just the kind of careful you get when everyone knows the room is full of sharp edges. They asked about work. I said it was steady. My dad mentioned a news story he thought I'd find interesting. I nodded. The whole night felt like trying to have a conversation underwater. Words came out slow and heavy. No one knew how to talk without stepping on broken glass. When it was time to leave, my mom hugged me. My dad tried. I let it happen. But when she said she hoped we could move forward now, I looked her in the eye and said something I hadn't planned. I'm not here because I've forgiven you. I'm here because I'm done carrying what you gave me. Her eyes filled, but she didn't speak. I left without dessert. It fell out of a box I hadn't opened in years. One of those generic storage bins you keep meaning to go through, but never do, because you already know it's filled with ghosts. The box was labeled kitchen, but it wasn't. Maybe during the move, I just needed to call it something that didn't feel like grief. Inside, of a mismatched salt shaker, 2 expired soup cans, and under a faded dish towel. The envelope. Cream-colored, slightly curled. Postmarked 2019. Addressed in my mother's handwriting. The careful kind she reserved for birthday cards and sympathy notes. I hadn't seen it before. Or maybe I had and tucked it away without opening it. That year, I was working night shifts at a warehouse in Bismarck, living in a motel room with paper-thin walls and no mailing address that felt like home. Maybe it got forwarded. Maybe I didn't want to know. I sat on the floor, holding it like it was breakable. My hand shook, not from fear, from recognition. That kind of tremble your body remembers even when your mind tries to forget. When I finally opened it, there wasn't much inside. A simple card, floral print, nothing fancy. Inside, she'd written, "I don't know how to reach you. I just want you to know I think of you every day. No pressure, no expectations, just love. Mom, no epalegi." No mention of what she believed or didn't believe. Just that, just love. And somehow that broke something in me more than any confession could have. Because even in all her silence, all her failure to defend me, she'd still reached out. Quietly, without asking for anything. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there cross-legged on the floor with the card in my lap like it weighed 100 pounds. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't healing. But it was something. I took the card and pinned it to the inside of my bedroom closet door. Not where I'd see it every day. I'm not ready for that. But somewhere I could go if I needed to remember that even in the wreckage, someone had tried to send a signal. That night, I called Leah, told her I'd found something strange in an old box. She didn't ask what it was. Just said, "You okay?" I said, "I think so." It was the first time in years I'd said that, and almost meant it. The last time I took a Sunday walk with someone was in 2015, back before everything cracked open. Back when I thought solitude was a preference and not a sentence. So when Leah texted that she was 5 minutes out, something in my chest tightened. Not from fear, from readiness. The kind that feels unfamiliar when you've lived in survival mode too long. She pulled up at the curb in her dented Subaru, windows fogged from the morning chill. I was already outside, hands jammed in my coat pockets, rehearsing casual greetings like they were lines in a play. She stepped out, held up a thermos, and said, "Hot." Like that was all I needed to know. We didn't say much as we walked. The river trail was mostly empty, just a few bundled joggers and an old man feeding ducks with stale bread. The trees had dropped most of their leaves, leaving the path littered with color that no longer belonged to the branches. It felt honest, that kind of loss. At a bend in the trail, she passed me the thermos without a word. Peppermint steam hit my face, and I took a sip. It tasted like breath, sharp, clean, undeniable. I swallowed and realized I'd been holding my own for years. She didn't press, didn't ask what I was thinking. But when I handed it back, her fingers brushed mine and lingered just a second longer than necessary. Not in a romantic way, in a human one. We sat on a bench, overlooking the water. Ducks moved in slow circles. A child laughed in the distance. Leah exhaled deeply and said, more to the air than to me, "It's okay if you're not okay." I didn't respond, just nodded and watched the ripples push out from shore. When we stood to leave, she said, "Next Sunday?" Her voice was light, like a question she could survive hearing no to. But I said yes, not because I needed company, because I wanted presence. Later that night, I sat in my apartment with no TV, no distractions, just the soft hum of the heater and the memory of steam. I didn't check my phone, didn't reach for a drink. I just breathed, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the world to collapse again. It was Leah's idea to try the support group. Not for survivors, not for the falsely accused. Just a small circle at the Unitarian Church where people talked about rebuilding after being cut off from family, community, faith, whatever. No labels. I sat through the first meeting without saying a word. Just listened. A man talked about being estranged from his daughter over politics. A woman shared how her sister hadn't spoken to her in 15 years after a fight about their mother's will. Nobody told anyone to fix it. Nobody offered solutions. Just space. Just listening. Second meeting, I said something. I told them about the silence. How it became a second skin. How being hated for something you didn't do was almost easier than trying to be understood. Because at least hatred made sense. Understanding required vulnerability, and I hadn't had room for that in nearly a decade. They didn't flinch. They didn't lean in with pity. They just held it, like it wasn't too much. Afterward, a guy named Marcus, mid-50s, quiet, wore the same windbreaker every week, caught me outside. Said I had a good voice. Not the you should be a singer kind. The you could read to someone who's scared to fall asleep kind. I hadn't heard anything like that since before 2016. That night, I walked home instead of calling a ride. The air was crisp. My lungs hurt from the cold, and I liked that. It reminded me I was still here, that my voice could still come out of my own mouth and not be mistaken for a monster's. And sometimes, that's all you need. One quiet moment where the past loosens its grip and you hear yourself clearly. Leah asked me to take a family picture. Nothing formal, just her and the boys in the backyard, some fallen leaves. Afternoon light catching in the curls of her youngest. She didn't smile much in photos, but that day she did. Small, tired reel. The kind that says, this is enough for now. I hesitated before sending the final edit. Hovered over the file, like it was something more than pixels. In a way, it was. It was proof that I could still witness something good and not ruin it. She texted back a single line, "You have a good eye." That stayed with me. That weekend, I went back through some old folders. Photos I'd taken before everything. Sunrises, street corners, strangers caught in quiet moments. I used to have a website once. Nothing fancy, just a blog with captions that sounded like diary entries. I deleted it when the accusation hit. It felt dishonest to keep showing beauty when my own life felt so wrecked. But now, I don't know. I started a new folder. Called it Still Here. It's not public. Not yet. Maybe never. But exists. And that's something. Later that week, I caught my reflection in a storefront window. Same coat, same tired eyes. But something about the way I was standing made me pause. Not proud. Not confident. Just present. I didn't look away. The first time I said my full name out loud to a stranger again, I was at the DMV. They called my number, and I stepped forward to the desk. The woman behind the glass asked for identification. I slid it through the slot, and she read it back to me like it was any other name. No change in her face. No recognition. Just a transaction. Then she asked me to confirm it out loud. And I did. Clear. Steady. No hesitation. I hadn't realized until then how long it had been since I said my own name, without bracing for disbelief or disgust. Without wondering if someone nearby might remember the headline, or the rumor, or the sideways glance in church. She typed something into her system, stapled a form, and called the next person. I walked out into the afternoon light with my new license and a strange tightness in my throat. It wasn't pride. It wasn't sadness either. It was something quieter, like stepping into your own skin after living in shadow. That night, I told Leah, not as a story, just as a fact. She smiled and said, good. We sat on her porch for a while, the street lights flickering on one by one. Neither of us talked much. And for once, the silence didn't ask for anything more than just being shared. I'm not fixed. I'm not free of what happened. But I'm not lost anymore, either.